Hello and a warm welcome to the Pitch Side Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes, which you can listen to on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. And of course, follow us on social media, Side PSP on Twitter, Pitch Side Pod on Instagram. And welcome to episode 121 of the Pitch Side Podcast, and join us for more. Realistically speaking, there's only one place we can start from, and that is, of course, Spain, and we're talking about El Clasico between Real Madrid and Barcelona, of course, but elsewhere in the Liga before, Getafe lost to Cadiz at home 1-0 thanks to an own goal from Timor in the 64th minute. David Timor in the 64th minute made it 1-0 for Cadiz, of course, in that game. Athletic Bilbao drawn goalless against Deportivo Alaves at home, and Eibar lost to Avenge 1-0 at home as well. So, in El Clasico, I think I'm not going to be mentioning more than what I did in the review, really, because I think I still believe that, the game wasn't exactly that great. Although, I saw and I heard opinions saying that the game was exciting. I didn't see that excitement, particularly in the first half, at the very least in the first half. I didn't see where that excitement came from. Barcelona controlling the ball, yes, for the most part. Real Madrid stung them on the counter, yes. But I think aside from that, there wasn't exactly that much of a tit-for-tat stuff or an end-to-end stuff, or the game wasn't stretched out for the most part. That justifies saying it was an exciting game. It delivered. As a Clasico, it definitely delivered, and we can see how things are going to be going. Of course, ahead in the league. But back to the game itself, Barcelona, I think, started in the wrong way against Real Madrid. I think the three in the back didn't work. It wasn't successful. It wasn't effective. You don't change a team that wins. That's right. But I think you need to change your shape somehow to try at least and counter Real Madrid's counter, because that's what you're going to be relying upon. They know that he will try to dominate the ball, and they try and get you high up the pitch so they cannot let you get the ball out. So they try to play play deeper than usual, and make the quick transitions and rely on Kroos and Modric in quick transitions instead of relying on them to control the pace. And they did that really, really well for the most part. The first half ended 2-0. Real Madrid, I think, were the better side in that first half, even though they didn't control the ball, and the ball was Barcelona's for the most part. They still stung Barcelona where they mattered. Karim Benzema got himself a goal in the Clasico after 6 games without one in the Clasico, and it looked for all intents and purposes that Real Madrid should have scored more, at least in the first half, because Valverde hit the bar. Ter Stegen made a couple of saves. It should have been more for Real Madrid. It should have been at least 3 or 4-0 for Real Madrid at halftime. But definitely, missing chances always gives a door for Barcelona to get in the game, and they did in the second half. And again, as I mentioned in the review, it was like the game against Liverpool in the start of the second half. Barcelona started super strong, scored a goal, and everybody thought, well, Barcelona are going to be making a comeback because the momentum is with them, right? No, it was the same scenario as in Real Madrid, starting pressing straight afterwards. This time it wasn't successful. It didn't result in a third goal or anything like that, but still, I think it was a good sort of press in the next 15 minutes after Barcelona's goal that it justified Real Madrid sitting deep for the rest of the game. A detail that probably people would miss is the changes, I think. The changes I thought for Zidane were pretty, understandable, because he has a game against Liverpool in the Champions League, and he needs to keep his players fresh for the most part. He really needs that. But definitely, overall, these changes almost had the negative effect on his side, really, because later on in the game, Barcelona, upped the ante and upped the momentum, particularly in the last 10 minutes. They seriously had a couple of chances. Elias Mariba hitting the crossbar, saves from Courtois, defensive intervention, defensive blockings, shouts for penalties, really, although I think that Braithwaite shouldn't have a penalty. It was too soft, and Mendy, was just about hanging on to his hand. Like, it wasn't exactly something that deserves a penalty. Like, Braithwaite went on too easily here, and in a game like that, played under weather like that, by the way, it's a big factor, the weather. Like, it's not easy to play under serious heavy rain like that. It was a tarantula in the Alfredo Di Stefano Stadium yesterday, and playing like that, your shirt heavy, and it's not easy to move, really, because like in the second half in particular, it became super strong and super heavy of a rain. So it was almost unbelievable how the players managed to finish the game. Real Madrid, though, finished the game with 10 players, with Casemiro being sent off. So, that is going to be quite, the loss in the next couple of games, at least, or the next game straight away, for Real Madrid in the league, who they'll be facing Getafe, of course, next week away from home. The importance, I think, of the victory is it doesn't need us to stress that the victory for Real Madrid is important here. Takes them top of the table, by the way, joined with Atletico Madrid, but of course Atletico with a game in hand against Real Betis on Sunday. They need to win that as well. For Barcelona, this loss in El Clasico, it doesn't hinder their sort of hopes a lot. I mean, they're still 1 point behind both of them, and at the very best, they will be 4 points behind Atletico Madrid today. So it's not exactly going to be the worst of scenarios losing their Clasico, but it still hurts because Barcelona were on a really good roll. They were really having some serious momentum. 9 victories in a row in La Liga, having one of the best attacks, having the best attack in the league so far, having the best defense, one of the best defenses in the league as well. And overall, I think, really, in a season where they expected, and everyone expected Barcelona to sort of fall down the card, some people even saying they would not even make top 4, they really sort of flipped the expectations, flipped the script, and turned things around in La Liga. They're now, they still have a chance, pretty much, to win it, although I still favour Atletico. I really still favour Atletico for one major reason. Real Madrid still have Champions League to play. And if anything, that is going to take out of their focus, take out of their squad, take out of their energy, because you look at some players and they're injured yesterday. You look at Vasquez, he was injured. You look at Valverde, he was limping. They're missing Varane and Ramos, and you don't know exactly how long it will take before Cruz, Casemiro, or Modric are hit by the bug of the injuries. So overall, an important victory for Real Madrid. Not the right time to lose for Barcelona. Certainly not the right opponent, at the very least. Not the right match to lose for Barcelona in El Clasico. But overall, that is what is going to be happening in the next weekend. Obviously, the expectation is now in Barcelona to make a comeback. Real Madrid, it will be for Barcelona just winning their next 8 games and waiting for the trips and waiting for the slip-ups from Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid. This week, of course, the round 30 finishes with Villarreal Osasuna on Sunday, Valencia face Real Sociedad, Real Valladolid Granada, Real Betis, as we mentioned, face Atletico Madrid and hope to rebound and go back on the top again. For Atletico, Celta Vigo hosts Sevilla. That is on Monday. From El Clasico and La Liga, we go on to Germany, and we go on to talk about the Bundesliga. It was eventful, really, yesterday. The Bundesliga, certainly, there's a couple of big points that we're going to be focusing on here. Let's kick off with Bayern Munich versus Union Berlin. A game that, Bayern Munich entered with a depleted squad, realistically. Bayern were playing with what I can call only a second-tier squad, or a third-tier squad, even considering some of the players they've been in. Josip Stanisic is a 21-year-old defender. Is an academy graduate at Bayern. It's his debut for the senior club. Like, he wasn't even on the bench at certain games. But he starts today against Union Berlin. Javi Martinez is brought in centre half. Starting with Thiago Dantas in the midfield alongside Thomas Müller. Kingsley Coman, started and then went down injured, and that is another worry you don't want. Jamal Musiala also went down for a substitution injury. Hopefully nothing is serious, because Bayern at the moment are quite depleted again. And they're really crossing the fingers and toes and everything that at least a couple of the players that are injured can return on Tuesday against PSG, but the turnover is pretty short, so you cannot really guarantee anything for Bayern Munich as far as the squad is concerned. Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting is a shoe-in for that game. You have to start him because there is no other option. And, whatever is left of the likes of Pavard or David Alaba or Leroy Sané or Kimmich, it looks really bleak. Like, the picture looks bleak for Bayern Munich ahead of the second leg against PSG. I still believe that they can do it, but with this depleted squad, that belief is just shrinking every day. And every time I hear news about another Bayern player injured or a Bayern player that, is a doubt for that game, I really just fear the worst. I fear that it's going to be a catastrophe, a disastrous exit from the Champions League against PSG at the Parc des Princes. But of course, they also have their own injuries. Marquinhos and Navas. Add to that, if Navas is going to be playing on Tuesday, it'll be quite something, but it looks like it won't be the case, though. The game itself, it was a classic, I think, Bayern Munich dropping points kind of game, where, they lead. Jamal Musiala scored a beautiful goal, by the way. Superb footwork inside the 6-yard box, getting in past two players and then scoring. That guy's a gem. And Germany, I think, did the right thing by convincing him to join the national team, by calling him up. Certainly, he's going to be in the squad for the Euros, at the very least, if not a starter, because that is hard, but definitely he will be in the squad for the Euros. And then Union Berlin, a team with absolutely give them a lot of credit for defending really well, and, they scored a goal that gave them a crucial point, I think. They still have some, some sort of, ambition to get a European place, get a late European place in that competition. And of course, as far as Bayern are concerned, the focus is now on the Champions League. If they lose the league at this point, it will not matter, because the Champions League is the focus now. The second leg of the game against PSG is the absolute focus at the moment, and is the most important thing in the world for that Bayern squad. A point that won't really hurt Bayern as much as it would help the other clubs. And speaking of other clubs that the point would help them, I'm talking, of course, about Leipzig in the first place, because they're the only team who would benefit from Bayern dropping points. They managed to defeat Werder Bremen 4-1. It was a pretty quick job done for the Roten Bullen, and for Julian Nagelsmann's boys. He's linked a lot with Bayern Munich, of course, and with the job at Bayern Munich, and with the situation with Hansi Flick. Hopefully we're going to get to that in the next magazine episode. Hopefully we're going to be talking about that a little bit more, but at the moment, let's keep it football. 3-0 at the first half, of course, for RB Leipzig. Solo scoring twice after Danny Olmo's opener, and there was no doubt really about this. Milot Trujecka made it 3-1, and Marcel Sabitzer made it 4-1 for Leipzig. 3 points that shrink down the difference to 5 points now, and, maybe we're going to get something as of a late title race. Certainly Bayern Munich are doing their best really to give us a title race in the Bundesliga, but it wouldn't be exactly time to call it a title race. I think it's pretty over. Something's not pretty over, though, is the top 4 battle in the in the Bundesliga, although it almost is. But there are quite the few pieces and bits here and there still to be played. Starting from Frankfurt, as Eintracht Frankfurt defeated VfL Wolfsburg 4-3 in a terrific game of football. It was incredible. This was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The momentum was seesawing between the two sides, mostly in the favour of Wolfsburg, really. But Eintracht Frankfurt managed to take the chance that they have, as few as they are, They took them to perfection, of course. After leading 1-0 by thanks to a Riddle Baku in the 6th minute, Wolfsburg lost that lead twice in the space of 15 minutes, and Daichi commander Luka Jovic managed to turn things around. Wout Weghorst was on the score sheet again to make it 2-2 for Wolfsburg. Then Andre Silva and Eric Durm again scored twice in the space of 7 minutes to make it 4-2 for Eintracht Frankfurt, and Tuta scored an own goal to make it 4-3 for Wolfsburg. But of course, Wolfsburg couldn't manage the equaliser, and thus they're going to be losing points, the gap between them and Eintracht Frankfurt is shrinking to only 1 point at the moment, and that is of course going to be really, really interesting for the top 4 spots. I mean, both of them are going to be qualified to the Champions League. Frankfurt are 7 points ahead of Dortmund, really, and, they don't have an issue, I think, with that. Speaking of Dortmund, they managed to turn things around against Stuttgart, of course, with the memories of the 5-1 at the Signal Iduna Park. Sasa Kalajdzic made it 1-0 for Stuttgart, and it looked like Dortmund are here for another day of disappointment, but Jude Bellingham made it 1-1, beautiful goal, the first Bundesliga one for him. Marco Reus made it 2-1 at 52nd minute, and despite the equaliser from Daniel Dedavi in the 78th minute, it looked like the game is going to be taking a turn to a draw, but Ansgar now scoring his first Bundesliga goal as well, and making it 3-2 for Borussia Dortmund in the 80th minute. An important victory for Dortmund, albeit maybe will be redundant in the end, because it looks like the top 4 is escaping Borussia Dortmund as grasps anyway. The Bundesliga weekend, of course, ends with Schalke facing Augsburg on Sunday, Köln facing Mainz on Sunday as well, in a direct relegation battle between the two sides, and Hoffenheim facing Bayer Leverkusen. That is happening on Monday. Before getting to the Premier League, of course, let's make a U-turn and go to Italy and see the Serie A. Of course, only 3 games took place yesterday. Spezia managed to turn around things again at the home stadium against Crotone. They're quite familiar with this scenario, being 1-0 down in the home stadium and then turning things around and winning 3-2 in the end. It happened quite some time there. The opener for Kofi Gigi in the 40th minute, of course. Then the equaliser from Daniele Verdi in the 63rd. Simi scored and made it 2 for Crotone. And in the last minutes of the game, literally in the stoppage time, Giulio Maggiore and Martin Elcic made it 3-2 for Spezia, of course. Spezia are surprisingly high above the relegation zone comparatively, really. They're 14th now with 32 points, while Crotone are really sinking at the bottom of the table. A 10-man Milan managed to defeat Parma away from home. Zlatan Ibrahimovic was sent off for argument in the 60th minute. I mean, if you look at it from if you look at the replays and whatever, you will see Zlatan Ibrahimovic pretty far from the action, and almost you don't understand why he was sent off. But definitely, he has a bit of a mouthful these days. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, this is his second red card of the season overall. One in the cup, of course, in the cup in the Milan derby. I mean, the famous melee and fracas with Lukaku, and this is the second one for him. And this is going to be a loss for the next game for Milan. I mean, whatever it is, it's going to be a loss. It's going to be a hard one against Genoa, by the way. So definitely he will be a miss in those kind of games. But even without him, Milan managed to finish the job and made it 3-1. Of course, the early goal from Ante Rebic assisted Ibrahimovic before getting sent off. 44th minute, Kessié made it 2-0. Riccardo Gagliolo made it 2-1 for Parma and almost made the game pretty nervous for Milan. But Rafael Leao made it 3-1 in the 94th minute, giving Milan 3 points that are crucial, at least in their Champions League hopes for next season, if not for the title that escaped their grasps completely, I would say. And in the end, of course, Torino, finally got a win to their name, really, in the season. It has been a very, very rough season for them, and they defeat Udinese away from home 1-0. Although that victory is not going to affect Udinese a lot, they still hovering around in a warm zone in the middle of the table, but Torino, at least, they get a couple of points of advantage above the teams of the relegation zone, Cagliari, Parma, and Crotone. Of course, the Serie A fixtures continue on Sunday with Inter hosting Cagliari, and early kickoff, Hellas Verona facing Lazio, Juventus facing Genoa, Sampdoria facing Napoli, Roma Roma, Bologna, Fiorentina, Atalanta, and on Monday it will be Benevento versus Sassuolo. Let's finish, of course, and wrap up the recap of the Saturday with the Premier League. Only 3 games took place on Saturday, but every game of them, I think, matters to a certain point and with a certain scenario. Of course, on Friday, it kicked off with Wolverhampton defeating Fulham 1-0 away from home. On Saturday, kicked off with Man City losing to Leeds United in a game that, literally, if you look at its momentum, I mean, if you don't watch it, you will not believe the score, but certainly there were bits here and there that made you feel it was a justifiable score. Leeds United, I think, ended the game pretty defensive. More defensive than usual. This was an anti-Leeds game, if anything. Was nothing like the first game that they had back in October or whatever. This was nothing like the games that Leeds had so far this season, because this is not a game where Leeds opened themselves up and, players were out of their positions. This was the game where I think Leeds were pretty pragmatic, pretty restricted, I think, of the way they played, and I don't know if that was instructions from Bielsa or the flow of the game just forced them to do that, but I think more it was instructions from Bielsa to play that way, and if so, that is, a little bit disappointing because Leeds are one of the enjoyable sides in the Premier League and we want them to play that way. And in the first half where Man City controlled the game but didn't have the sting in them, didn't even make big chances really in the first half. Leeds found themselves leading 1-0 thanks to Stuart Dallas, of course, a brace on the day for him, by the way. And after 3 minutes, of course, it was, joy taken away from Leeds United as Liam Cooper got sent off for a, sort of a ridiculous foul in a bit. I mean, he called Jesus late and, the referee had no choice but to look at VAR and announce it as a red card. 10-man Leeds, playing at the second half, but despite that, they defended superbly, I think. They defended with everything they had. They only broke in the 76th minute, with Ferran Torres scoring, of course, from the assist of Bernardo Silva, and everybody thought, well, okay, here it is. Man City with the rotated side, of course, no De Bruyne, no Mahrez starting, no Aguero, no Foden, of course, no Kyle Walker, no Rodri as well. There was no Ruben Dias in the back. There was quite the changes, and of course, thinking about the game against Borussia Dortmund, and certainly, Man City, looked like a second-string side. You expect to have enough quality to overpower Leeds United, but somehow that didn't happen. And in fact, Leeds United literally stole one in the death, thanks to, again, Stuart Dallas in the 91st minute, of course. I mean, there was a couple of occasions really before the goal where Leeds looked like scoring. They creeped behind a very high line for Man City for some reason. Of course, they were looking for the second goal and they were chasing the game. Stuart Dallas sneaked behind and, of course, got a beautiful finish from a beautiful pass from Ezgan Alioski. 2-1 it is for Leeds United, an important victory for them that takes them up to 9th now, and out of nowhere they look like really involved in the in the sort of the top 6. I mean, they could really finish in a good place. They really could finish in a good place in the table. I mean, their season is pretty decent by the standards of of a team that been just promoted to the top division. I think their season has been pretty brilliant, enjoyable football all around, having some good results against some big clubs, and definitely they deserve their place at the moment in the table, and they will be working, of course, to improve it. Another side that will be working to improve their place, hopefully, it is Liverpool, and they played against Aston Villa, of course, the game where the first leg of that game, or the first fixture of that game, started a downward spiral for Liverpool that they're still suffering from to this very day. The 7-2 result, of course. They defeated Aston Villa 2-1 late on thanks to Trent Alexander-Arnold, of course, who had at once the best and the worst week of his career, really. He had the worst game against Real Madrid in the Champions League, and then, of course, he bounced back pretty well against Aston Villa in the league, making it 2-1 for them late on. The opening goal from Ollie Watkins for Aston Villa almost threatened to have another loss at home, and that would have been disastrous, really, again, before the second leg against Real Madrid. But Mo Salah equalised early on in the second half, and then, of course, Liverpool didn't have the best of games. I mean, they had a mostly passive second half until the late goal from Trent Alexander-Arnold. Of course, a brilliant finish, by the way. If you forgot the quality that Alexander-Arnold had because of the sort of the medium season or the mediocre season that Alexander-Arnold is having, well, that was a good reminder, I think, of the quality that they have. And of course, he will be working his tailbone off, trying to get a place in that Euro squad. He's one of those players that you feel for them for not being included in the squad. But of course, I think Southgate did the right thing. But now it is Arnold's chance to work hard and to prove that he could still belong and he could still be a part of that English squad. Liverpool now are 5th in the table, of course, 52 points, joint with West Ham, who dropped to 6th before playing, of course, their own game on Sunday. And, of course, Chelsea above them with 54 points. Speaking of them, they had a pretty easy job against Crystal Palace, particularly in the first half. They really settled the game off since the first half. Inside the first half an hour, they were 3-0 up. Kai Havertz scoring, Christian Pulisic scoring, Kurt Zouma scoring, and of course after a victory against Porto in the Champions League, and looking most of them going to be qualified to the semi-final really, it looks like things are really, smelling roses in Chelsea at the moment under Thomas Tuchel. Yes, they lost against West Brom 5-2, and that loss was pretty disturbing for a while, but they bounced back really well in the league. They bounced back really well in the Champions League. Although we cannot exactly judge them by these kind of games, we should be judging them by bigger games, but certainly they had some bigger tests to play. Of course, they had they had Atletico Madrid, they had Liverpool that played against those as well, and of course they're looking ahead to a game against Man City in the semi-final of the FA Cup next week after the second leg against Porto in the Champions League, so that is going to be quite an interesting week as well for Tommy Tuchel's boys. And the fourth goal, of course, in the game against Crystal Palace was added thanks to Christian Pulisic, a brace for the American on the day, having a really, really good game, rotating the squad pretty well. Conte was a sub, Reece James was a sub, Hakim Ziyech was a sub. I mean, definitely it was a very good performance from Thomas Tuchel, a very pragmatic one, I would say, from Tommy Tuchel. Definitely the kind of performance that he wants, and for the first time under the Tommy Tuchel era, Chelsea score more than 2 goals in the season. The Premier League, of course, action continues on Sunday. Burnley hosts Newcastle United, West Ham hosts Leicester City in a very, very important game as far as the top 4 are concerned. Tottenham, of course, host Man United later on. Sheffield United host Arsenal, and then, of course, on Monday, West Bromwich versus Southampton, and Everton and Brighton Hove Albion facing Everton on Monday. That's it from me. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Thanks for watching/listening to this episode. Follow us on social media, site PSP and Twitter, Sideboard on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Most importantly, like, share, and comment on this video. And of course, enable notifications to receive the updates. Help us on the way to our first K and share it around. Thank you for joining. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP, and goodbye.